Retirement is often seen as a destination, but we believe it's an opportunity to pursue your passions, realize your dreams, and live a purposeful life. Great decisions, incredible lives. Retire with Intention podcast is about more than just money. It's about embracing the things that truly matter, the experiences, the relationships, and the impact you leave behind. Here is your host, John Creekmur.
Well, everybody, welcome again to Great Decisions, Incredible Lives. And I'll tell you what, I so love every week being able to spend some time with you all. And thank you for spending time with us as we just kind of walk through stories and we get to introduce you to and meet so many different people. And today I'm so excited. I know in my personal journey of life, I was telling Kim just a little while ago, just things our family's walking through is just kind of timely as far as having her here today. I know all of you are going to be blessed, and Kim is just even transitioning from one location in the country to another right now, and so kind of walking through that, but phenomenal background professionally, and is walking through and taking all lessons learned in life, and really going out to help people navigate some challenging times. And so, Kim, I'm excited to have you here today as far as on the show. And as far as welcoming you, hey, can you kind of walk everybody through, give an introduction of yourself, your background, and kind of what your focus is?
Sure. And first of all, I want to say, John, that I have so much respect for what you're doing, holding conversations for people to live their best life. And, what a mission that is. And I feel gratitude for that because it's just helpful to have so much support. So thank you for that. As for me, I have been a registered nurse since 1980. So that makes me like really old. And I worked in every intensive care unit there is, literally. And I worked in trauma. And ultimately, I worked in the emergency department. While working in trauma, I got burnt out. This ties to my book, and I'll tie that in a moment, but it was hard to see people suffer the way they suffer in the medical system and our lack of power to make decisions that would help people not have to suffer. So I love people, and I just think we're all so complex in a beautiful way. So I went back to graduate school in psychology. After that, I realized that for me, an ER nurse, psychology was kind of like watching paint dry. I couldn't do that. So I went back into nursing. And then several years later, I went through a really, really bad divorce. And I made it a mission to try to create a space where people can disagree without eating each other alive. So I went to Hofstra University and studied something called transformative mediation. And then I went to graduate school again at the age of 50-something and got my master's degree in conflict management. During all that, my heart for all of the people that I'd seen in my nursing career. Well, let me just say this. The first person I saw die, I'm a 19-year-old registered nurse, and I'm sitting at her bedside, and I have this vision of a book with the ends closing. Like, this is her life story, and it's coming to a close. And she had no one with her, which is why I stayed with her. But I wondered about her life. I just wondered what secrets she had, what joy she had. And then through a long career of walking beside a lot of people and their families when they died, I always experienced that this is their story. And even this ending is part of their story. And there can be conflict in that ending that is really exacerbated by not planning for it, by not having challenging discussions, by not recognizing that we're going to die and deciding how we want to do that versus leaving decisions to family members who don't know what we want. Because I believe that every moment we're living our story, and our story is our legacy. And in stories, endings matter. So I just had this, I met an author, and he's like, oh, I'll do this training you can put a presentation or something. And I just started writing this book, and it just kept on coming. And basically, it's the first chapter, what do you need to close your story well? So that is, and the how to live forever part is that our story is our legacy, and our story lives on. And I believe it lives on through every time we touch somebody. We don't know, but we keep going in that. So what decisions do we need to have a good ending? We need the legal decisions, as you know, the finance decisions, which I did not write about because I can balance a checkbook, but that's about it. The healthcare decisions, which I'm very, very passionate about.
Hmm.
Leaving your story as your legacy, because we know from research that only 10% of people want you to leave grandma's gnomes. They want to know their story. They want to know your past. They want to know what got them where they are through you. And then we have loops to close to end well. And very often there are
Mm.
relationship issues. We don't die wishing we had more money. We die with regret for relationships that are not healed.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
as a mediator, I'm a mediator now. I help families have those discussions so that they can reach something where nobody's to blame. It's not about right and wrong. It's about how to heal as much as you can and move
Hmm.
forward to a better
Hmm.
relationship. It's about a better closure. So, I have tips for that, for conflict management. And then finally, using mediation as a tool to have these conversations because they're very challenging for people. I find a lot of older people want to talk about their ending, their death. They want to plan for it, and their family will often be like, "Oh no, you're not going to die." And newsflash, I say that death is not a failure of the medical system.
Yeah.
It's not a punishment for eating too much bacon. It's what we're wired to do, and we can do it
Mm.
well by planning for it and having these conversations,
Mm.
or we can leave it to chance, and that's just a hot mess.
It is. And I truly love the way you share the story about the book with the first lady, your first client you were with whenever she passed away, and you saw
Mm.
her story of life really as a book, and that we have the final chapter coming. And what is so incredible for everyone listening to our conversation today is to recognize that you have time to write your last chapters. You have time to write the next chapter. And oftentimes we allow our past experiences, our past hurts, the things that maybe some of the strong viewpoints to really dictate and start to write chapters for ourselves. But folks, you can control what that looks like, that next chapter. And this whole thought of transformative mediation, Kim, I mean, that to me, that is a life-changing word, a phrase
Mm.
that I had quite honestly had never heard of before. I wrote down as you were saying that as a key word moving forward. I even think in society today, that whole
Yes.
concept could be so healthy for us as we navigate relationships, and how that can have an impact for generations to come if we can walk through key principles. And so, whenever I kind of think about this, you had mentioned that one of those first challenge points in a family is whenever mom or dad is wanting to talk about kind of the last part of their life, and some of their family members are like, hey, you're fine, you're gonna live, don't worry about it. Well, it's not allowing them to walk through maybe a conflict which hurts in the healing process. Can you kind of walk through some things that you've seen as far as common conflicts that
Oh,
arise within families as parents age? And then maybe a piggyback on that, how can mediation help them resolve that?
yeah. You said so much. I want to back up to you, made the
Mm.
comment earlier that, think about this, you have time. Well, my answer to that is maybe.
Mm. Well said. Yeah.
Because nobody intends to go in the ER the day they
Yeah.
show up in an
Yeah.
ER. And I had a 5-year-old niece die of a brainstem glioma. We don't
Mm.
know. That is the biggest lesson I learned in my medical career is every moment matters because we
Yes.
don't know when our last one is.
Well said.
And
Love it.
and honestly, when you prepare, my friends who have worked through the book said it's hard to plan your ending to some degree because we don't have these conversations, but they said it was also freeing because
Mm.
it's like all the other things that we keep in the dark. When we bring them to light, when we have the discussions, the weight is off, or at least
Yeah.
to some degree it's off. So, yeah, so your other question was what kind of conversations have I had with people around this? I've learned so much from the families, from the clients themselves in terms of these conversations. One of them I'll never forget is a woman who had a terminal illness. And she said, I am ready to die because most people are when it's time. She'd made her peace. A lot of people don't, but most people do.
Mhm.
She said, I know my death is going to be harder on my family than it will for me. So people hold on sometimes. They're reluctant to let go. They put the people they love through so much to keep them alive. This is a huge source of conflict because that process, the decisions they make, those are the last vision, the last picture they'll have of the loved ones that they have.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a friend who is amazing counselor, and she had the conversations and thought she was prepared. But when she got to the hospital and her husband had a terminal illness, the hospital naturally started the process of, well, next we do this and next we do this, because it's an algorithm, right? And they put him through stuff that ultimately he wouldn't survive anyway. So talking in terms of quality of life, where's the bar that you're willing to have things done and continue with medical aggression, assertiveness, treatment, because at least you will have this? And where's the point where it's just keeping you alive? Because the crazy thing about medicine, John, is we do live longer now, and we have treatments for so many things, but everything has a consequence. This is true. Because of this, it's taking longer and it's harder to die. And that impacts families and it impacts the people who are dying. So we have to be aware. We have to think through, what are the consequences of the treatments, of the decisions? Because sometimes even if we can keep someone alive a little bit longer, ultimately they're going to have to go through that dying process anyway. So just to begin to have these discussions, and sometimes often it's relationships, right? Because in a family, adult siblings will hold on to their conflicts from, 2 years old and you stole their cookies. And, there's all the unresolved conflict comes around these decisions, because when you talk about the end of a life, it's probably the biggest decision you ever make. As another client said, that these are conversations that are literally the difference between life and death. So they're important conversations. So other things come into it. So other family conflicts come into it. People wanting power and control, to be quite frank. Who has that? The part about how much autonomy, how much decision making, even in the presence of dementia, right? Because we're not all or nothing. There's points that we can make decisions. So walking through that as a mediator with families, so that maybe everybody at the table can have peace at the end of that. And there will be pain. There's pain and regret. There's loss. We can't hide that. We can't cover from that. But I do know, if I can quickly share a client that I love.
Please.
This man was a football player. He was in his 60s. He walked into my office and he said, I have a terminal illness. I'm eventually going to be paralyzed and die, and I'm ready to die. And he said, I'm just going to sit here and die, is what he said. And I said, well, that's an option, because I never want to take away anybody's options.
Right.
I said, but my dad, when he was diagnosed with something, said the same thing, and he lived 10 more years. I said, so maybe you want to think about, because you have children, maybe you want to think about what you want to pass on to them in terms of an example walking through this. And we worked together for 2 years. Eventually, we talked through hospice, and the day came when he knew he was going to die. And so they decided hospice. He was awake and alert to make that decision. And when he made the decision and chose the company, he made a joke, and it was a very crude joke, so I won't tell it on your, but I do tell it sometimes. But he made a joke, and his family laughed. Humor was their gift. Humor was their gift. And I walked out of their house thinking, if they hadn't been prepared, this would never have happened like this. They wouldn't be laughing when he calls in hospice. Now, there was pain and grief too. But afterwards, his widow said, I don't know why. I feel like I should be grieving him more. They were able to walk through that process for the whole 2 years to some degree, instead of saving it for now's the reality. The reality was with them all the time. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a healthy way to walk through that, and to walk through for the whole family, to kind of, it's such a challenging time. And to be able to walk through mourning in that way is so healthy, Kim. And I was just kind of looking at your book, the title of your book, How to Live Forever. How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. And this came out back in the end of 19. And then we went through just an incredible time in the history of our country, right? Shortly thereafter. And boy, there are so many folks that really, I'm sure, have benefited in the midst of all of that uncertainty just by going through what you had written there. But even the title, How to Live Forever, can you walk through with everybody kind of how you got to that title? And what was the philosophy overall in the book that our readers are going to be able to see whenever they hop over to Amazon? And we'll have a focus list. We'll have a number of links inside the show notes as far as where to find this book, as far as maybe even some worksheets as far as the things to go through to help you on your journey. But definitely one of the links is over to Amazon. But can you walk everyone through how you came up with the title and what is the philosophy as far as in the book?
Yeah, the title came to me and I held to it. I wasn't going to change a word of it because that was one of those moments where I am so passionate about that, the fact that our impact every moment is how we live on. It's how we live on. It's how we live on for our families. The choices we make now is our memory, our gift to them or not. So I think we all want our story to end well, right? We want our legacy to be something that makes an impact. Most of us want to leave some kind of a legacy or impact. And this is a profound way, the end of your life and how you do that, and closing loops of relationships. So I've had clients come to me where family members haven't talked in 100 years and it's affecting the children of them. We want to know our aunts and uncles. Well, their story ends, their legacy is there forever, is broken families. You have the opportunity to write a story that reconnects families to whatever degree that's possible, but it's always possible to some degree. To walk through the end of life and those decisions where your family is not having to make those decisions that are heartbreaking because they don't know what you want or what's important to you. And then leaving your story, just leaving your story. There are wonderful forums online. I hope I think of it real quick while we're talking, but I got one for my dad that they send you, I'll email it to you so you can share it with your listeners, but it's an app that you ask any question you want. They send a question a week, a question every 2 weeks to your loved one. They answer the question. They'll copy it into a hardbound book and you can add pictures of it. And then you have a forever story that's literally a story. When I started this, my goal was to include an app like that. I wanted people to be able to write their life story and have it bound into a book, but I couldn't afford to hire somebody to do that for me. And then lo and behold, somebody else did do that. And I know people who've used it and they just love it. So your life matters. I mean, your life matters, and then how it ends matters too.
Yeah, it does. And, I'm sure a lot of people are sitting there thinking, boy, we're talking about transformative mediation. We're talking about elder mediation and things that are challenging in life. Kim, I can think of probably some folks are going, boy, that sounds like a really good process to walk through. I'm kind of scared of what that looks like. Can you kind of help people understand what does the mediation process look like whenever somebody begins the process? What does that look like for them, and to kind of put some of their mind at ease as far as in the process?
I love that. That's fantastic. So let me clarify that there is a type of mediation that's called transformative with a capital T. And that's where I first went to Hofstra to study. I am not a transformative mediator because it has its own unique limitations. I use a lot of different styles, but mediation itself is transformative. It definitely is. That should be the capital T, but unfortunately that's the lowercase t. So I meet with each party separately, each person separately, and hear their story. And I know this, every story is everybody's truth. It is the truth, standing in their shoes with their background, their DNA. It is the truth. So I hear stories, and then we work through what kind of an outcome do we want. And we bring people together then to have a conversation. That is, emotions are allowed, but my job is to keep it safe. Now, the whole process separate and together is confidential. So people can tell me things in private that they just need to unload that maybe they can't say to someone else. There's no judgment. I know how hard it is to be a human being. I know how frustrating it is. There's no judgment. And when we get rid of some of this pain that we have, we can pretty much come to the table then. Hard to believe, but it works. So no blame, no right, wrong, no judgment, confidential conversation that's designed on what do we want the future to look like. We can't figure out who was right and wrong because really from the seat I sit in, I can see both people's position from their shoes. I can. But now how do we come together so we can see and hear each other? And then what do we want the relationship to be like? And when you hold a space that's safe without the judgment and blame, All of us mediators who do this know that miracles happen. And I mean, the best mediators in the world who started this process will say the same thing. It's crazy. You get rid of judgment, you get rid of blame, you get rid of all the pain you've been carrying to some degree. The universe just starts giving you guidance.
Mhm.
And here's the thing, John, when we're in conflict with somebody, we think we have two choices. They can call us or not call us, or two choices. And in mediation, we look at those choices and draw a line between them and say, what else can we do? Because we always have more than two choices.
Sure.
So we help generate options that we can do if we can't do this or that.
Mm. That's a phenomenal description of what the process looks like. And so as folks are starting to think through, hey, this is a part of a journey I really want to consider walking on. And I really am interested in the last chapters of my book and having some input on what that looks like and what it means then, even for future generations as far as an impact. They're probably saying, how can I best prepare to make the best use of that time? And so before we head into those conversations, is there anything that they should do to prepare as far as in their thoughts? Or should they just kind of like say, hey, we're just going to wing it and show up?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, actually, to get a start in all of those different areas, right? Just to start planting seeds. When you start planting seeds, each person's going to pick up their own part of it. But it's a pretty comprehensive book on things that you need in terms of lists and thought processes and, ways to start the conversation. And there's so much information out on it now, too. So many Google online how to have these conversations. There's some place called the Conversation Project that you can actually write things down that answer the questions towards your end of life. I'm happy anyone can reach out to me with a question or where they need to go, and I'm happy to point them in a direction if I can help them. But I want to say mediation is more than this. People will hear of mediation in terms of context of the legal field. We're going to go to court and the judge says you go to mediation instead. The beauty of mediation is anytime there's conflict, whether it's business conflict or conflict with your doctor or conflict with your family, mediation is a phenomenal tool where it's not nearly as expensive as the legal field is. It doesn't, legal field, somebody wins and somebody loses, but mediation is a branch of the legal field, so I'm in that. I'm actually a member of the American Bar Association. So there's an early dispute resolution to start mediation before you even get an attorney so that you can determine your best outcome without fighting so much between you that any potential for reconciliation is broken because of how acrimonious the legal fight is.
I really appreciate that description of how mediation, how maybe there's some misconceptions with some people and they view it more as a legal process. That's a great description as far as what that actually looks like. I was thinking back just even probably the last 4 or 5 meetings just last week I had with different various clients. They all come from different backgrounds. And so maybe different cultural backgrounds, different geographic backgrounds. And so we kind of think about that whenever we're bringing in different cultures, different backgrounds into the mediation process. Does that have impact on things or not so much?
Yeah. 100%. That's 100%. I think that's part of the magic of mediation is that we're not like a lot of systems where one size fits all. We see you. You said it so well, because the truth is when people know they're seen and heard, that's when the transformation happens. So yes, we're respectful of culture, but you can't lump a culture into, you're this culture, therefore you need this. So,
yeah, exactly.
So it's of the individual. And if a person says, I need this or I didn't need this, we're constantly negotiating and working through what do you need and how do you get it. It does work really well for bringing together different cultures, and kudos to you for recognizing that people are individuals and need to work through everything as an individual and not one size fits all.
Yeah. That's it's so spot on because so oftentimes I think people are looking just for a simple cookie cutter approach that applies to everybody the same.
That's right. That's right.
Man, we are so unique and our relationships are unique, and the variance of those relationships and how that kind of compounds over time, it creates a unique subculture that is just unique to you. And so how you walk through it has to be just equally as unique. And so wonderful process. I think that the entire topic is one that's going to resonate with so many people. And I know we all go through life together. We all have different backgrounds, we have different experiences, but we're all carrying things that we need to really figure out how to navigate to get the best outcomes for larger impact. And I think that your title of your book, to me, it was so clear, Kim, is like How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. That's such a compelling title because it really truly puts the control in the individual's hand to say, hey, if I walk through this well with a wonderful guide to help me along the way, such as Kim, well, then we're going to be able to get to that spot where that final chapter is one that really makes sense to them, that they have control over. I love that. And when I think about that is we kind of walk through a lot of things. I want to kind of focus things down to a specific endpoint, Kim. When you kind of think through things, is there anything that we have not discussed so far that you think, this is that one key point or that one takeaway I'd like for folks to make sure that they remember?
That's beautiful that you asked me that. It's like you're reading my mind because, first of all, yes, the mission behind the book was to give everybody personal control over their lives, to let everybody think through what they want in honor of your life. Yeah, the thing I wrote down while you were talking, the one thing I want to say, when I talk about conflict, I say this all the time, but it's relevant here and it's something to think about since I have an opportunity. Look, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I'm against you.
I love that.
It means I'm me.
Yes,
it means I
yes.
have exactly what you said, a different upbringing, a different set of genes, a different mind. It just means I'm me. So if we can stop thinking that people who don't agree with us are against us and start seeing that they're just different than us, and that's not a bad thing because at the end of the day, we do have more in common than we do differences. Always.
Yeah.
We're all breathing, right? Like that's one thing.
Kim, thank you so much for the time today. It's been such an impactful time in my life personally. I so appreciate you, your thoughtfulness, and the way that you brought things together. And folks, as you're listening, going through things, and you're considering your own book of life, I'd encourage you to definitely check out show notes, how to get more information about Kim and how to connect, and then also for sure get a copy of How to Live Forever, phenomenal resource that I think will really impact your life. And so everybody, thank you so much as always for listening every single week, and look forward to connecting with you all next week. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for listening to the Great Decisions, Incredible Lives, Retire with Intention podcast with host John Kriegmer. Follow us on social media, visit our website, and join our community of like-minded individuals redefining retirement and living incredible lives. Please leave us a review and share our podcast with others who may benefit. We wish you a future filled with purpose, fulfillment, and the joy of living your incredible life in retirement.